Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today is one of my favorite topics because we are talking about conversions, but specifically, we're going to be talking about copy that converts and a really interesting approach to copy that you may or may not have ever thought of before. So today I am joined by Sage Polaris, who I know from a women's networking group, and I'm so happy that we had the opportunity to connect, and you are going to love what she has to share today. But let me tell you a little bit about her, and then we are going to dive into all the good stuff. So Sage has written high converting copy for more than 475 projects, earning them millions of dollars. She helps personal brands and service providers to sell more of their service or offer with the words on their website. And isn't that what we all want to do? She has worked with Teachable and Rick Moretti and Lynn Twist and some of the really internet famous people that we all know and love. And so she's kind of some of the copy secret weapon behind the scenes there. So Sage, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here with me today.
Thank you for having me, Krista. I get very excited to have these conversations. I'm also I dressed up today, full face of makeup. I'm ready. Let's do this.
Amazing. All right. So first thing I want to start with, before we dive into some of the specifics of what you do, because I really love the unique way that you approach things. But first is, how important is the copy we write to conversions? Because I think a lot of people sometimes dismiss it a little bit and think it's not that big a deal. So what is your take on this, and why or why not do you think it's really important?
Well, I feel like your messaging is what lands with people. It's what they remember you for. And also in terms of conversions, when it comes to copy, there's a piece of the pie a lot of copywriters don't talk about, which is actually looking at your data and optimizing for conversions. I love copywriters, they understand frameworks. They get you have to do certain things with your call to actions to increase conversions. And so a lot of times they understand those strategies, but it's rare that you'll find a copywriter, and this is something I love to do if my client can provide it, to look at your previous data from an existing launch that you've done or an offer that you've made or an evergreen service or whatever it is that you have going on in your business. But to go look at your email open rates, to go look at your click-through rates and say, how can we beat our own metrics here and get even more effective results with existing copy in the business? So that to me is really the crux of what copy conversion means, is understanding the frameworks for sure of how to write an effective email that gets a high open rate, but also learning from your pre-existing data, which is a step so many people skip because it's kind of like bookkeeping. Nobody wants to look at their numbers. And I totally get it. But when you're at that stage in business where you have data to go off of, it's pretty incredible what you can do with that information. And my favorite is when people go back and look at their numbers and they consider something quote unquote like a fail in their launch. They didn't get a result that they wanted. But then we look at their conversion numbers and we're like, actually, this area was working really well. It's that you need to tweak this particular piece to get the result that you want. So it allows you to really hone in on what's effective in your business. And that's where I get really nerdy and excited. So that's what it means. Copy conversion means to me is understanding how to write more effective copy and messaging that will land with your audience. And a lot of the times I just want to say one quick tip to have better converting copy is to use one of the biggest things I see missing is to use more customer voice data. And what that means is use the actual words that your customer is using when they describe either their problem or the solution. because you'll find that people are like, oh, she's in my mind. Like she totally gets what I'm thinking right now. He or they, like she, he or they, any of the pronouns, that they get what I'm thinking and that they actually do know how to solve my issue because they understand my problem so well.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. And I think so much of what you just shared there is gold because entrepreneurs, being the visionary, the ideators, the creators that they are, the brilliant geniuses that they are, they tend to like to go out and get things created if they're doing their own. They're not always really great at going and looking back at data or using that data to drive decisions or changes. And as a result, I feel like sometimes when they're hiring people, not always thinking about those things. They're not necessarily looking for those things because they themselves don't always do it. So I love that you shared those tips. I think that's so incredibly valuable. The other mistake that I see people make a lot, and I know you talk about this, is when they are creating copy, they tend to kind of speak to themselves instead of speaking to the variety of different people that may be consuming their copy and interested in their service or their offer. So you have kind of a unique color-coded copy system that you use for converting on sales pages and looking at buying types. So can you dive in and tell us some of your secret sauce there?
100%. I love what you said about speaking to themselves, because another thing I see in copy is like a lot of people will just talk shop. Like they'll use jargon that only their peers would know, but their customers may not even be aware of. So that's just one blanket thing to look out for. And then getting into understanding the buyer types is so important, because what people don't realize is not everyone makes buying decisions the same way that they do, right? So there's actually 4 central buyer types that you want to appeal to when you're writing a sales page or writing a sales email or writing your Facebook ad or your Instagram post, any type of copy, or even just convincing your partner to walk the dog. There's basically 4 ways to persuade them, and each buyer type responds differently to the copy that you've written. So I'll start with the first one. And as we go, Krista, I'm curious to hear, I think I know which buyer type you are, but I'm curious to hear which one you feel like you are. So the framework that I use for this is to think about The Simpsons TV show, because it's got 4 very relatable characters, but they each make buying decisions in a very specific way. And with that TV show, it's been running for like over 2 decades. It's probably the longest running TV show, at least on American TV. And it's like pretty incredible what they've created. So let's get into it. The first buying decision maker that I want to talk about is the Barts of the world. So this is loosely based on DISC, which is a personality quiz. You can take it if you want to go deeper on this, but I trust that you will know which buyer type you are by the end of this conversation, and you can start applying it to your copy right away. In fact, I hope you do. So Barts of the world, they are the fast decision makers. They are the type who land on your sales page and they're looking for the buy button. They already on a gut level know that they want to work with you. And so slowing them down by burying the button on your sales page or burying the link in your email for the Barts of the world is not a good idea. They're scanners. They're never going to read the whole thing. And they already know that they want to take the action, so don't slow them down. We also love them because they prove our product to us, because they're the ones who buy the fastest. So do you feel like you have any Bart in you, Krista?
Actually, this might surprise most people. I think I'm about 90% Bart.
Oh, that does surprise me.
People
Totally.
think because I'm systems oriented that I am, but I am I'm a quick start. I don't need to know the details. I don't need to know anything. I'm like, yeah, that's right for me. And I hit buy.
So good. Okay. So if everybody listening doesn't feel like they're a Bart, I got 3 more characters for you. So the next one is Homer. They are the fun-loving decision makers. So they're the type who land on your copy, whatever they're reading, and they're looking for music lyrics, puns, gifs, funny images of you doing things. Like I have a picture where I did like a headstand, right? Like, so they're like, oh, she looks like a good time. Actually, on my website is the best example, because that's the one people, it's so funny. I'll be on Zoom and somebody's partner will like come in the background and they keep putting a pin on their upper lip, like balancing it, trying to balance it on their upper lip. I have a picture of that on my website. I'm like, oh yeah, they're doing my brand photo from my website. So I love that one because many people have told me, they're like, oh, she looks like a good time. I want to work with her. So those are the homers, those fun-loving decision makers. And they're great. Like there's certain things about every personality that like strengths and weaknesses. They're always kind of late to wherever they go, but they're the life of the party when they get there. So you're excited that they showed up. So those are the homers. Do you feel like you have any homering you at all, Krista?
Just a little bit.
I love it. And listen, we have, the other thing I'll mention is we have all 4 of these characters in us, right? Like I might switch from being a Bart for a low cost product. And then I'll tell you about the Lisas next for like a high cost product, high ticket. I'll turn into a total Lisa. So Lisas are the detail-oriented decision maker, and that's where I was going to guess you would land, Krista, because you're into systems. So they are the type who will read your entire sales page, top to bottom. The thing about their personality is once they start, they can't not finish something. Like that is who they are. So if they begin reading something, they have to read the whole thing. They're in their mind, the thing that they're thinking the entire time they're reading your offer or reading your email or anything else is this for me? Is this for me? Is this for me? So the thing that you can do for the Lisas right at the top of your sales page, for example, I see this missed so much, is it's like you'll have this name that you came up with, a beautiful name for your offer, right? So let's just say it's called Lean Systems, just since Chris is here. And then they'll forget to say lean systems for XYZ audience. Like who is this meant for? Like for established entrepreneurs or for emerging entrepreneurs. Not defining your audience, they're a little distracted the rest of the time they're reading your page because they're still thinking, is this for me? And then the last piece I see missing from the top of a sales page or every time you mention your offer is to also say if it's like a 3-month program, group program, or if it's a private service, whatever it is, like include that at the top because they're asking themselves that question. And if you haven't answered it at the beginning, they're not really paying attention to the rest of your copy because they're still asking those questions. And what I do love about the Lisas, I used to get I would craft a magnum opus of a beautiful sales page, send it to my list. And then the Lisas of the world would write me an email and start asking me questions. And I'm like, I answered that on the sales page. Like, what's wrong with these people? I get a little annoyed. And then I realized that's how they start a sales conversation, is to ask questions. And so actually they want to buy from me and I need to be there to reassure them that the product is for them based on their they always get into the specifics, right? So their very specific situation makes them feel more comfortable. Krista, has there ever been a time where you felt like you turned into a Lisa on something?
Yeah. So here's something that's fun with me with DISC. I am DISC. I am DISC. And so depending on the context in which people know me, a lot of people would think I'm a C, but I go to C when I need to. And you don't want me to go to C. If I go to C with you, that's not necessarily a good thing. It's like if I don't have the comfort level, if I don't have the confidence that something is right, I will deep dive into detail and I will leave no stone unturned and I will figure out every last little baby thing to make sure that it's right. But I prefer to be more of a quick start, a fast action taker. So I will become a Lisa if I don't have that initial intuitive or whatever, something doesn't speak to me enough in the beginning where I'm like, this is it for me. I will then do the opposite and deep dive into every last detail.
I love that though. Like you want that on your team, right? And I know you support people with their systems in their business. So that's beautiful. For me, I very much identify as a Lisa because I'm a copywriter. Like I love all the details, right? And so I've noticed though, like my skill as a Lisa is to very easily be able to notice when there are gaps, right? Like if I can see when things are missing so easily. And so that's where my detail-oriented personality comes in. And I love when people ask me, when they're getting ready for a launch, like, what are we missing here? I'm like, oh, I can tell you everything you're missing, right? So it's so interesting to learn that about you too, Krista. I love that. Okay, so then let's get to our fourth and final character, which is the Marges of the world. And they are the deep connection decision makers. So they connect mostly to your story. Like the more that you share your story, the more they might identify with you, either related to your story or just feel more deeply connected to you because of your story. They also are very visual people, so they love strong branded visuals. So having beautiful branded photography in your email or on your sales page, that will attract their eye. I had a sales page for a live event. So I do private copy for my clients, but I also do my own launches, and I've had like 6,000 people come through my no charge copy course. And we were doing a live 100-person event in Niagara Falls, and we had a graphic of the falls, and it said, "Step into your future legendary self with $1 million view of Niagara Falls to fuel your inspiration." And so that's an example for those Marges of the world where they feel super connected to the graphic, and you're pulling them in with a vision with the language, and you're pairing it together. That will catch their eye and then pull them in even more and make them feel like they want to be in that room because they want to connect with people. So that's an example of how to appeal to the Marges of the world. And do you, Krista, feel like you have any Marge in you?
I have a lot of Marge in me. Like for
I
me,
wouldn't guess.
Yeah, branding is so important. And I identify so much with the visual elements. I've had so many businesses. I'm a designer. So I design jewelry. I design and, do these amazing photo shoots. And so for me, the visual elements are so important. And I think the visual elements are what allow me to be more like a Homer where I could make a quick decision. Without them, I don't do well with just words. I need the vibe. I need the feel. I need to see it pretty, and I need it to be something that I aspire to be a part of.
I love that. So just a quick recap for everyone. The Barts are the fast decision makers. The Homers are the fun-loving decision makers.
I meant Bart.
Yeah, it's totally, and it's just good to go over it again in case anybody's taking notes. So Bart's fast, Homer's fun-loving, Marge is the deep connection decision maker, and Lisa is the detail-oriented decision maker. So those are your four casts of characters that you want. I guess this leads me to also saying that sometimes I have people who don't want all four of those people in their audience, and I'll give you an example. So let's say you are a trainer for C-suite executives, right? And they are all Barts. They are all typically born leaders, CEOs of the world, fast decision makers. If you're training them in a room together, let's say you have 20 of them in a room together, they do not want to slow down to learn. They get annoyed when the detail-oriented, the Lisas, are asking questions. So that's an example where you would want your sales page, let's just say, instead of making them go through a fancy funnel to hire you, like if you're down to put your phone number on that page, they just want to text you real quick or get on a phone call real quick, or you make them book a call, like all those things that allow them to quickly, or you're like, you can DM me on Instagram. Those are the types of call to actions that work better. And that's an example where you could have a shorter sales page and a really strong call to action for that personality type, because you only want C-suite executives. So there are times where you can exclude folks. I personally like having all four in my audience, but you have to discern like who's in your audience. How do you want to appeal to them?
That's so interesting. And so my brain is spinning right now. And I'm like, who would I want to exclude if I were excluding anyone? I'm like, I don't know that I would want to exclude anyone. But because I tend to like the fast action takers and the detail oriented people, I'm like, do I want the really fun people? I don't know. I make sure that I take pictures where me and my team, you can see how fun we are. So I don't know that I would exclude anyone.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned your team too, because having a well-rounded team of the different personalities, knowing how everyone best operates is also really important, so you can meet them where they're at and play onto their strengths. So for example, having a visionary leader, CEO of the company, having like an OBM that works with them that's very much a Lisa, like a more detail oriented person, because the Barts of the world are great starters, horrible finishers. Again, not slighting them at all. It's just a part of everybody has strengths and weaknesses. So having a Lisa as someone to fill in on the details or finish things that they start, and telling them also, this is one thing I see very often is like, they can start a bunch of fires, the Barts, like 10 fires at once, right? Like all the irons in the fire. But then having a Lisa there to be like, no, this is our vision. You're not doing 7 of those. We're only keeping 3, right? So that's an example of, with your team building, being really clear on what everyone's strengths is, and then allowing them to lean into that strength and be able to share with people when they're like, this is great. I love all your ideas, but we're tabling 7 of these.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I play both roles. I'm a weird unicorn, and I play those roles with myself.
It's rare.
I feel like I have like dual personalities, and I'm fighting myself all the time
with each other too. Yeah, that's so funny. Sometimes they fight. It's exactly what I was saying. Like sometimes they fight with each other, but and it can be tricky to navigate that. But when you know that about yourself, it does kind of make it easier and just be like, okay, I see what's happening here.
I love it. Okay, so I have a question about sales pages, because you mentioned something really interesting about maybe you don't necessarily always need the long form sales page depending on who you're talking to. So are there any tips in crafting sales pages to either appeal to all 4 buyer types, or to be really intentional to exclude certain buyer types if we want to?
Yeah. So with the sales pages, like I mentioned earlier, if you are wanting to attract C-suite executives, you can get away with a shorter sales page. Be mindful of your call to action on there. Another one I get is like, do I need a video on my sales page? If you want to attract the Marges of the world, it would be ideal because they feel more connected through video, right? But giving someone your phone number, like I just did an email sequence where some folks didn't know me as well, and they kind of got put into my world, which was a beautiful gift. And so I put my phone number in the last few emails as I was getting ready to close cart, because I wanted them to have easier access to me, and I wanted them to feel like very personally connected to me. So that's an example though. Like I did have a full-blown sales page, but I added in my phone number towards the end of the email campaign because I knew there were some more detail-oriented decision makers. That longer sales page was there for them. And then for the Marges and the Barts, I was like, just email or just text me if you want to talk. Like it's all good. So those are some different reasons why you might have like a longer sales page. Another thing I'll say, outside of the personality types, is to understand that if you're running colder traffic, then your language should be slightly different, and your sales page should be longer, because that is going to give them more robust information about you because they don't know you as well, and they may or may not be as aware of the problem that you're solving. So that's an example of a longer sales page being a good idea. But if you're working with like a really hot and warm audience, sometimes you don't even need a sales page. And this is something I do every time I launch a new revenue stream in my business, I'll sell from a Google Doc. There's nothing wrong with that, because I mostly, when I have a new revenue stream offer, like for example, this summer, I offered VIP days in a group program. I usually only do them privately with clients. And so typically I would sell from a Google Doc for that new revenue stream. I happen to have an existing sales page that I just needed to convert the messaging a little. So I used that. But a lot of times a new offer that I'm testing, why am I going to pour so much money into it? I can just sell from a Google Doc. It's no big deal. So that's an example of like understanding when you should pour more money into something, and also understanding the type of audience that's going to see it. I typically sell to warm and hot folks for a new revenue stream and simplify my launch process so that I can prove that it's profitable.
Right. I love that. And I do that as well. And I love hearing that you do it. So people know, right? If you work with me, I have like this whole second tier of offers that you'll never find on my website that are exclusively available only for people who work with me. And so for those, I don't create sales pages. I don't do anything. It's all Google Doc based or conversation based. So I love that.
Yeah. And I just want to tag on to that a little. So I sell VIP days privately to mostly people who know me really well. I've never had a sales page for those. All I have is a very simple calendar page that they can see my calendar availability. They can see my pricing. It's all linked inside of Acuity embedded on one of my WordPress pages. There's a little bit of copy at the top that sounds more like an email. And in fact, it was an email. And then 3 testimonials below the calendar section. So I don't ever want, there's always strategy behind what you're going to decide to do with an offer. And the reason I never went like full blown sales page with my VIP day offer is because those folks are already low on time. They're fast decision makers. Like, I already know all about them. They're the CEOs. They're the ones with bigger like opportunities in front of them. They just want to go. They don't want to read a bunch of stuff. And a lot of times they come from referral. So just knowing your traffic quality and making some decisions about what your page is going to look like based on traffic quality is huge as well.
Brilliant. All right. So we talked about sales pages. We talked about copy in general. Let's pivot and talk a little bit about email. So is there anything that we can do with our copy for email that will help us with our open rates?
Oh my goodness. I am a huge fan of email. I just want to say, like, I'm going to get into email, but a lot of what I talk about can also be applied to social as well. So in terms of increasing your email open rates, there's so many reasons first why you want to do this. So if you want better deliverability with your email service, they keep a score on you. I don't think people really talk about this very much. So let's say ConvertKit or MailChimp or whatever you're on. They keep a score on you to see basically whether or not you're spam and whether or not you're like breaking their rules, right? So having a higher email open rate means better deliverability for your emails in general. So that's one reason why you definitely want to increase your email open rates. The other thing too is just like knowing that people on your list actually want to hear from you. A lot of those people who are on your email list, if they're not opening, they're basically squatting because you're likely paying for your email service provider depending on how many subscribers you have. And so having people squat on your list makes no sense to me. I constantly scrub my list. And so that is the most effective way to increase your email open rate. It's like the easiest and the most effective. And so I have a gift for your audience that I would love to share that they can then take the triple email open rates, my 3 emails, they can copy, paste, and personalize them and remove unengaged subscribers if you've had an email list for a while. The other thing I love that people use the triple email open rates for is if you've ghosted your list. It happens to the best of us. I know, I've been there. I've had to like take a break from talking to my email list. But these 3 emails, you'll be able to reappear in their inbox and know exactly what to say. So if you go to sagepolaris.com/Krista rocks, because she does, you can get those 3 emails and you can copy, paste, and personalize them and send them to your list and reappear in people's inboxes or get rid of those unengaged. Anybody who hasn't opened in the last 90 days, they really don't need to be there.
Yeah, that is great. And thank you for sharing that gift with everybody. I just went through this process and I wish I had those templates before I did it, but I just culled, I want to say I deleted, like literally deleted 60% of my list. And it is so hard to hit the delete button. I was on with Ella from my team and she's like, "Are you sure you want me to hit delete? Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Just hit delete." And so we wiped out about 60% of our mailing list because we only want people who are active and engaged. And it is a little challenging to force yourself to hit the, the goodbye, but it just makes so much sense. And we have seen an increase in our open rate. So it's so smart to do that.
Yay, welcome to that club. It's a lot the first time, but once you rip off that Band-Aid after the first time, you get more comfortable with it as you go.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Okay, so tell us more about your work. Tell us about what you've got going on. Tell us about how you support your clients and where people can learn more about you and find all the things.
Oh, thank you. Well, the best way to get into my world is to get on my email list. So again, you can go to sagepolaris.com/Krista Rocks and you will be in my world. And I work privately with clients still. It's about 50% of my business. So if someone needs copy, feel free to email me. My email is sage@sagepolaris.com. And then I also, the other half of my business, I run a copy template membership. And I've been doing like mini mind adventure days. I'm getting ready for my next one in London, which is so exciting. I did one in New York and LA. Where we just go like on an adventure together. We went to the spa in New York. We went on a boat ride in LA. I think I'm going to go to the spa in London. I'm going to usually I give people a choice, but this time I'm like, no, I just want the spa. I don't want to do anything else. And so those are ways to connect with me. And then I have coming up, I do a no charge copy course once a year in January. And so we're planning for that right now. It's August and we're like getting ready because it's the biggest event that I do. I've had like 6,000 people go through that. So just get into my world and you'll hear all about how to come participate in the course when it's ready. And I would love to stay connected to people. That's my favorite thing.
Fantastic. All right. So I'm so curious to hear what you're going to say to this, which is I ask everybody, and that is, how do you work smarter, not harder, and keep things lean in your business?
Oh my goodness. I feel like this is going to open up another conversation for another day, but I take 4 months off for the 8th year in a row in my business. So I'm a huge fan of working smarter, not harder. And the way that I've been able to do that is for the very first step is to commit for the next 12 months. How much time are you going to take off? Put it on your calendar now so that you are more likely to actually stick to it. But that's the thing that's helped me the most is like first getting clear on the vision that I want for working more leanly and then creating everything from that system.
Okay. There's another topic we didn't get to in this call that we're going to have to save for another conversation. So we're definitely having you back because I want to dig deeper into that. And I also want to hear about how you recently shifted your business model because I think that is going to be so fascinating for people. So for all of you listening saying, did you really just put that out there and you're not going to talk about it today? You're going to have to wait for part 2. Sage, thank you so much for being here. Before we wrap, any final tips or any final strategies for people to consider as they're looking to increase their conversions with copy?
Oh, well, first of all, Krista, thank you so much for opening up your circle and being such a gracious host. I absolutely loved this conversation, and I agree there has to be a part 2 now. Sorry, y'all. But any final thoughts around conversion copy? I mean, I would say if you haven't had any basic training around it, even if you hire people in your business to do it, seek out some training. Like things are changing in the copy conversion world. Attention spans are definitely shortening. Inflation has changed the way people buy. And I think my biggest tip in this moment in August 2023 is to say, if you have an offer that's not selling that typically did, you're not alone. That happens quite a bit ever since Q4 of 2022. And the best solution is to give folks multiple access points to your existing offers. You don't need to necessarily burn down your whole business, but you do need to reimagine your existing offers. And so if you can give people more access points to experience your work, meaning like you have a higher price, give them a lower trial or something like that, that's what I found has really worked in my business these last year or so.
Fantastic. Yeah. And that's such great advice because it has been a rough ride for a lot of people just trying to figure out what's happening. And I see a lot of people reactively throwing things out and starting over, which I've been talking about a lot lately. And that's not usually the right solution. Sometimes it is, right? There are times when we truly need to make pivots that large in our business, but usually we just need to make those small, really strategic changes and experiments to see what's working. So I love the strategy that you just shared.
Oh, that's beautiful. And my heart goes out to everyone if you're having a rough ride, and I hope it smooths out for you soon.
Absolutely. Sage, thank you again so much for being here. We will have Sage back on the show. So I hope you all loved this conversation as much as I did. And we'll see you again next week. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. I hope you got a lot of value and actionable insights from today's show and would love if you take a moment to leave us a review. If you have any questions on today's episode or on how to lean out your business, join us over in our private Facebook community where every week we do live training and Q&A, and I'd love to have you be part of the conversation. Head to leanoutmethod.com/group to join us. And before you go, be sure to subscribe to the show so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. We'll see you next week.